Bronwyn Newport never imagined her marriage would become the center of Salt Lake City's most shocking storyline. Yet Season 6 is exposing cracks she can't patch with glamour, confidence, or designer heels. And now, even more explosive details about her relationship with Todd Bradley are surfacing. Details that threaten to flip the entire dynamic of the show. Before we go any deeper into these twists, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss a single RHOSLC truth bomb. Bronwyn has always projected the image of a woman who has it all: a thriving career, a luxurious life, and a supportive husband. But that image shattered last season when Todd's past infidelity came to light. Fans thought the couple had quietly repaired things off camera. But Season 6 proves the wounds were never fully healed, and the bleeding hasn't stopped. The trouble resurfaced the moment Todd was caught looking at pictures of other women on a flight, an act Bronwyn tried to brush off publicly but couldn't ignore privately. It wasn't just curiosity, it was a reminder of betrayal, a reminder of everything she tried to bury. Whitney Rose happened to be the first person to hear the story, and it opened doors to a conversation Bronwyn wasn't sure she was ready for. What started as girl talk about older husbands turned into a confession about open marriage, one Bronwyn wasn't even sure she believed in, but felt obligated to consider. The real twist? Bronwyn wasn't just joking. She was genuinely offering some sort of arrangement, even if she couldn't define what that meant. Her voice trembled on camera, but her determination to keep the marriage alive overpowered her fear. When she and Todd finally sat down to discuss it, the conversation wasn't just uncomfortable, it was history-making. Housewives rarely open the doors to their deepest marital secrets, but Todd allowed cameras to roll while his wife asked the question most partners never dare to voice. Do we need to change the rules of our marriage to survive? He wasn't expecting it. He wasn't prepared, and he absolutely wasn't ready for the world to hear it. During her recent reality hot seat interview, Bronwyn admitted just how devastating it was for Todd to watch that scene back. He had known it happened. Of course they talked afterward, but seeing the conversation unfold on TV was something else entirely. Bronwyn compared the moment to being traded from one sports team to another. "I might get benched for a season," she joked, but the truth behind the joke was sharp. She knew she had crossed a line he wasn't ready to see crossed in front of millions. Todd's trust in the RHOSLC cast is fragile at best, especially when it comes to Lisa Barlow. He believes she stirs the pot, exaggerates details, and pulls strings from behind the scenes, and the thought of Bronwyn confiding in anyone, especially Whitney, sent up alarms he never bothered to hide. When Bronwyn said, "He felt like I was giving the other team our playbook," it wasn't just a metaphor. In his mind, she wasn't just sharing a marital struggle. She was exposing a vulnerability that could be weaponized by their castmates. Still, the most astonishing revelation came during episode 10, when Bronwyn said she was open to whatever if it meant saving the marriage. "If you wanted to do something different, have an arrangement, be open, I would consider it," she told Todd. Her voice cracked, but her promise was unwavering. "I would do whatever I needed to do to evolve with you." Those words hit fans harder than any seasonal feud. Because this wasn't just a marriage facing challenges. It was a marriage being rewritten in real time. But what the cameras didn't fully capture was the emotional weight Bronwyn carried long before that conversation ever took place. She didn't arrive at the idea of an open marriage overnight. It was the result of months of trying to hide pain behind perfectly curated outfits, picture-ready smiles, and rehearsed confidence. Behind closed doors, Bronwyn was navigating a marriage that felt like it kept shifting under her feet. Every time she thought she found balance, something else knocked her off center. And Todd's wandering eye on that flight was the blow she could no longer ignore. The moment she told Whitney, everything changed. Whitney wasn't just another housewife. She was someone who understood complicated marriages, aging relationships, and invisible cracks that look fine from the outside. But opening up to her was also a risk Todd never approved of. He didn't voice it right away, but his disappointment simmered, rising with every replay of the scene. And when Bronwyn finally confronted the situation head-on, she realized the conversation wasn't just about what Todd did. It was about what she was willing to tolerate in order to keep her family intact. As she replayed the moment in her mind, she admitted something even the audience wasn't ready for. Todd didn't want her discussing their marriage with anyone, not even the women she films with every day. His distrust wasn't small. It shaped the rules of their relationship. It dictated what Bronwyn could say, who she could confide in, and how vulnerable she was allowed to be. Yet Bronwyn broke that unspoken rule on national television. And that's where the true tension began. Todd felt exposed, blindsided, even betrayed. For him, the real issue wasn't the suggestion of an open marriage. It was that Bronwyn handed their private pain to a room full of women he didn't believe had her best interests at heart. Bronwyn, on the other hand, felt suffocated by silence. She couldn't carry the weight alone anymore. And despite the risk, she chose honesty. What she didn't expect was how deeply the conversation would shake Todd. When she said the words, "I would evolve with you," it wasn't an empty promise. It was her attempt to salvage a relationship slipping through her fingers. But to fans, it raised a much darker question. Why did she feel she had to bend so far for a man who kept breaking the rules? The moment created a rift in the fandom. Some viewers praised her loyalty. Others feared she was sacrificing too much of herself. And a growing number began wondering if Bronwyn was preparing for a future she wasn't yet ready to say out loud. Still, the most chilling part came later, when Bronwyn hinted that Todd's biggest fear wasn't losing her, but losing control of the narrative. Because once something appears on RHOSLC, it lives forever. And now the world knew that Bronwyn Newport was willing to reconsider the entire structure of her marriage to keep it alive. A revelation that left Todd questioning her loyalty and Bronwyn questioning her limits. But that was only the beginning. Season 6 didn't just open the door to their marital struggles. It unleashed a storm Bronwyn wasn't prepared to stand in alone. And with each episode, new layers peel back, revealing a partnership stretched to its breaking point. The next twist comes not from Todd, but from someone Bronwyn never expected to challenge her choices. Someone who forces her to confront whether she's protecting her marriage or destroying herself in the process. The shift began quietly, almost too subtly to notice, until it hit Bronwyn like a tidal wave. Someone she trusted, someone she believed saw her heart, stepped forward with a truth she wasn't ready to hear. And that person was Whitney Rose. Whitney had listened to Bronwyn's confession with empathy. But empathy wasn't the same as agreement. And when the cameras rolled again, she finally said what she'd been holding back. "Bronwyn, you're giving up pieces of yourself you may never get back." Those words pierced deeper than any accusation Lisa Barlow could ever hurl across a reunion couch. Whitney wasn't attacking. She was warning. And that's what made it hurt more. Whitney had been through her own marital cracks, her own struggles with trust, intimacy, and expectations. But watching Bronwyn calmly suggest restructuring her marriage to make room for Todd's behavior, that crossed a line she couldn't stay silent about. Whitney reminded her that compromise shouldn't feel like surrender, that adapting shouldn't require erasing yourself, that love shouldn't demand silence. But Bronwyn wasn't ready to accept that. Instead, she defended Todd. She insisted their marriage was evolving. She explained that arrangements weren't weaknesses, they were strategies. Strategies to survive a long-term relationship the public had no idea how to understand. What she didn't realize was how her defense exposed yet another layer of the real problem. Bronwyn was trying to outrun her own hurt. Whitney's concern didn't sit well with Todd either. Even off camera, he saw Whitney as someone who meddled too much, asked too many questions, and encouraged Bronwyn to break the boundaries he thought they'd agreed on. So when he learned Bronwyn had been discussing their marriage with her again, he wasn't just frustrated, he was furious. To Todd, it felt like betrayal. To Bronwyn, it felt like survival. To Whitney, it looked like a slow-motion collapse, and the audience saw it too. In episode 10, when Bronwyn finally admitted on camera that she would do whatever I needed to do to evolve with you, the confession wasn't empowering. It was heartbreaking. It showed just how deeply she was willing to contort herself to hold the marriage together. Whitney recognized the danger in that. Lisa recognized the opportunity, and the rest of the cast sensed a storyline ready to explode. Meanwhile, Bronwyn pretended everything was fine, until cracks began forming not just between her and Todd, but between her and Whitney. Because a question lingered unspoken. Was Whitney helping her, or pushing her toward a decision she wasn't ready to make? Bronwyn didn't want to face that question yet, so she threw herself deeper into her marriage, deeper into proving she could fix it, deeper into the idea that love meant flexibility, even if it hurt. But the more she tried to adapt, the more Todd pulled away emotionally. And the more Todd pulled away, the more Bronwyn leaned into the cast, especially Whitney, for support, creating a triangle of tension no one expected. Because behind the scenes, Todd wasn't just uncomfortable, he was keeping score. Every conversation, every confession, every tear Bronwyn shed to someone else. Heffelth's trust slipping, Bronwyn felt her power fading. And Whitney feared Bronwyn was losing herself in a marriage that kept demanding more. But their twist was still coming. A moment Noon's approaching. A confrontation that would force Bronwyn to choose, not between her husband and her friend, but between the truth she feared and the life she desperately wanted to protect. The breaking point arrived on a night that was supposed to be calm, one of those cast gatherings meant to reset, to smooth out tension, to pretend chaos wasn't simmering beneath perfectly blended foundation. But RHOSLC women never walk into a room without emotional explosives tucked in their handbags. Bronwyn came in trying to play neutral. Smile steady, voice light, determined not to let her private life spill into the group again. She wanted peace. She needed control. But control slipped the moment Whitney pulled her aside. Whitney wasn't angry. She wasn't dramatic. She was sincere, too sincere. Bronwyn, I care about you, but I'm worried you're carrying something alone that's too heavy. The softness in her voice made Bronwyn's chest tighten, because that softness was exactly what she'd been avoiding. It forced her to confront everything she'd been holding back, and for the first time, she snapped, not with rage, but with fear. She told Whitney she didn't want to talk about Todd anymore. She didn't want judgment. She didn't want opinions wrapped as concern. She didn't want her marriage dissected like a storyline. But Whitney didn't back down. You talked to me because you were hurting. Don't pretend you weren't. The truth was a knife. Bronwyn looked away. Her smile trembled. Her voice dipped into a whisper before she could stop it. I'm trying to protect something that keeps breaking. Whitney froze, because that sentence wasn't just vulnerability. It was confession, and the cameras caught it. Before either woman could process what happened, Lisa Barlow casually drifted over with that signature facial expression that screams, I heard something I'm absolutely going to repeat. She didn't need context. She didn't need details. All she needed was a spark. She asked the one question guaranteed to blow everything wide open. Is everything okay in your marriage? Bronwyn's heart dropped. Whitney's eyes widened, and silence swallowed the room. Lisa wasn't asking out of concern. She was hunting. And Todd's distrust of her suddenly made perfect sense. Lisa thrived on fractures. She collected them. And the moment she sensed one, she went straight for the pressure point. Bronwyn forced a smile. Everything's fine, she replied, but her tone cracked like thin glass. Whitney looked at her, really looked, and for the first time realized Bronwyn wasn't just overwhelmed, she was drowning. The rest of the night spiraled quickly. Lisa whispered to Meredith. Meredith whispered to Angie. Angie whispered to whoever was close enough. And within minutes, the room shifted. Eyes lingered, voices lowered, curiosity turned into speculation. Bronwyn could feel the weight of every glance, every side conversation, every judgment that wasn't even spoken yet. But she could hear it anyway. The pressure pushed her to the edge. So when she stepped outside to breathe, she wasn't surprised to find Whitney following. What did surprise her was the question Whitney asked. Bronwyn, are you happy? Not are you okay? Not is Todd okay? Not is your marriage okay? Just are you happy? Bronwyn's breath hitched. Because no one had asked her that. Not Todd, not the cast, not even herself. Her answer didn't come easily. It didn't come confidently. It didn't come clean. Instead, it came out small and fragile. I don't know anymore. The wind seemed to stop. The cameras zoomed in, and Whitney reached for her hand, not as a castmate, not as a confidant, but as a friend who saw someone losing herself in real time. What Bronwyn didn't realize was that her uncertainty was about to become the most talked-about moment of the season. And Todd, watching everything unfold from the sidelines, wouldn't stay silent for long. Because this time, the battle wasn't about infidelity. It wasn't about trust. It wasn't even about open marriage. It was about the truth Bronwyn could no longer hide. The truth Todd was terrified she'd finally speak out loud.